Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I had been planning this little surprise for days, maybe even weeks. I wanted it to be perfect. My name is Miles, and I'm 35. I've been married to Clara for 10 years, and in that time, we've built a life full of routines, laughter, and small moments that feel bigger than they should. But lately, something had shifted. She had been buried under work more than usual, constantly messaging me, rescheduling dinner plans, and disappearing into spreadsheets or Zoom calls until late at night. I tried to understand, to not take it personally, but there's only so much patience a person can hold before a small frustration grows into a quiet ache. That morning, she texted me around 10 a.m. Miles, I'll be working late at the office today. Don't wait up for me. I read it, and for a moment, my heart sank. Not because I expected drama or anger, but because there was this undercurrent of distance, a quiet reminder that she was somewhere else emotionally, even when she was technically present. The message was polite, casual, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Then, impulsively, an idea struck me. Why not turn this day into a memory instead of another routine? Why not do something small but meaningful, something that would break the monotony and maybe remind her, and me, why we had started this journey together in the first place? So I decided I would surprise her. Not with a gift, not with flowers, not with some predictable token of love. I would bring dinner to her office. A real, thoughtful, homemade dinner, carefully packed and warm. Something that would interrupt her day, just for a moment, with something human and alive. I went home and got to work. I chopped vegetables, seared salmon, boiled pasta, and stirred sauces with precision I didn't always have in my day-to-day life. Each ingredient felt like a tiny thread, weaving a pattern of intention I hoped she would feel when she opened the container. I set the table for two, even though she wouldn't be here. This was just the rehearsal, a quiet declaration of the effort behind the gesture. As I packed the last of the dishes into containers, I realized my hands were shaking slightly, not from the cooking, but from anticipation, from hope, from that strange tension that comes when you're about to cross a line between the mundane and the memorable. Her office wasn't far, but the drive felt longer than it should. I rehearsed in my mind how I would walk in, what I would say, how she would react. My internal monologue looped over and over. Will she be glad? Will she laugh? Will she notice the effort? I reminded myself that it didn't matter if she didn't say much. The act itself, this tangible proof of attention and care, was enough. When I pulled into the parking lot, I could see her through the glass windows of the office building, leaning over her laptop, completely absorbed. It struck me in that moment how small and delicate these gestures were in the grand scale of our lives. Here she was, a woman I had loved for a decade, yet somehow still so mysterious, so wholly herself, and I was about to try to reach her through something as simple as a warm meal. I entered quietly, holding the containers with care, my footsteps soft against the polished office floor. My heart was racing in a way that felt almost guilty. Guilty because I was interrupting her work, guilty because I wanted her attention, guilty because I had let so many other moments slide by without this kind of thoughtful action. She looked up briefly, her eyes scanning the room, and for a heartbeat, I feared she wouldn't even notice me. But then recognition flickered across her face, subtle but unmistakable. Miles? She said, her voice almost questioning, almost cautious. I smiled, trying to appear casual, though my chest felt like it would burst. Hey, I said, I thought you might like a little break. I gestured to the containers in my hands, the careful wrapping, the aroma still clinging to them despite the ride here. Her eyes softened, and for a brief, suspended moment, she looked at me like she was seeing me anew. Not as the man she had seen folding laundry, paying bills, checking emails, but as someone who had paused everything to do something entirely just for her. That small glance, the shift in her expression, was worth more than the effort it took to get here. She chuckled, almost shyly. You really did this? Yes, I said. I wanted to remind you that I'm still here, still thinking about you, even when work takes over. I wasn't trying to be poetic. I was trying to be honest. That was the thing I had learned about us over the years. Honesty matters more than grand gestures when those gestures come without meaning. She shook her head, laughing softly, a little incredulous, and I saw the tension in her shoulders ease ever so slightly. And then, in a twist I didn't expect, she leaned forward, grabbed a fork, and started tasting the food right there on her desk. Her reaction was subtle at first, a small, appreciative hum, but it grew into a quiet smile, and suddenly, just for a few minutes, the office didn't exist. The work didn't exist. Only the two of us, sharing this tiny, impossible moment of connection, remained. As she ate, I leaned against the edge of her desk, feeling a strange mix of relief and nervousness. Relief because she seemed to genuinely appreciate the effort, and nervousness because I knew this fragile bubble of connection could pop the second the world intruded again. Emails, calls, deadlines, and the endless responsibilities that filled both of our lives. But for now, none of that mattered. For now, there was only this warmth, laughter, and a quiet acknowledgement that, despite the distance work had created, we could still reach each other. "You didn't have to do this," she said between bites, her cheeks flushed, eyes twinkling. There was something in her tone, a softness I hadn't heard in weeks, that made my chest tighten pleasantly. "I know," I replied, "but I wanted to. You've been working so hard. And, well, I thought maybe I could bring a little normalcy back, even if just for dinner." She paused, fork halfway to her mouth, and looked at me with a seriousness that made my stomach knot. "Miles, I've missed this. I didn't realize how much until now." Her words hit me in a way nothing else could. Not the texts, not the weekend trips we'd scheduled and canceled, not the quiet nights where we passed each other like strangers. This simple acknowledgement, spoken out loud, carried years of emotion in a single line. I smiled, swallowing a lump in my throat. "We've both been busy. Life gets loud and we get caught up in everything else. But we're still here, Clara. That counts for something." Her hand brushed mine briefly over the edge of the desk, a gesture small yet loaded with meaning. The contact was fleeting, but it grounded me. I realized then that these tiny interruptions, shared meals, moments of laughter, whispered conversations, were the glue that had always held us together. And sometimes, it just takes one person daring to pause, to step out of routine, to remind the other of what they've been missing. We lingered there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. I told her small stories about my day, and she shared snippets of her work frustrations, triumphs, and mundane chaos. We laughed at a printer that jammed twice in the morning and groaned over a client who had asked for an impossible last-minute design change. Each story, each laugh, slowly chipped away at the invisible walls that had been growing between us. At one point, she looked up, her eyes soft and searching. "Miles, why do you always do this? Always think about little ways to remind me we matter to each other." I shrugged, trying to appear casual, though my heart was pounding. "Because I remember what it was like when we first met. Remember our first trip to Brighton? You wore that green scarf, the wind was crazy, and we laughed because we got soaked in the rain." I paused, smiling at the memory. "I want that spark to still exist, Clara, even if life tries to bury it under emails and meetings." A quiet smile spread across her face, and she leaned back slightly in her chair, her eyes glimmering with something I hadn't seen for weeks. Acknowledgement, warmth, and maybe a hint of gratitude. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a cinematic confession. It was quieter, softer, and somehow more real. That's what made it matter. As I packed up the empty containers, I felt a gentle relief settle over me. This was not a grand rescue. It wasn't some epic gesture that would solve all our problems. But it was a start, a tangible reminder that, even in the chaos of life, the effort to care still mattered. That connection, however brief, had reminded us both that the love we shared was still alive. Clara looked at me then, eyes bright, and said softly, "Thank you, Miles. I didn't realize I needed this. Needed you. Like this." Her words made the tension in my shoulders dissolve completely. I nodded, heart full, knowing that these small acts of love weren't about perfection. They were about presence, about showing up when it mattered, about reminding each other, every so often, that amidst the chaos, we still saw one another. We walked out of her office together that evening, the city lights casting a warm glow over the streets. She held my hand, and I felt the quiet certainty that no matter how busy life became, no matter how far apart our routines sometimes pushed us, we could always find our way back. Sometimes it takes just one act, a small, deliberate interruption, to bring the world into sharper focus, to remind us of what really matters. And as we walked home, side by side, I realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about the small, quiet efforts, the shared smiles, the remembered stories, the meals brought across an office floor that kept us tethered together. That night, I didn't just surprise my wife. I reminded both of us that in the midst of life's noise, the little moments are often the ones that matter most.